Good afternoon, everyone. I have 12 o'clock on the dot, so we are going to get started with our first event. I would like to first turn it over to Blaine Desi so he can give you a little background on our day today. Blaine?
Thank you very much, Kathy. Good morning and welcome to Global Entrepreneurship Week 2020 in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's my pleasure today to welcome you. My name is Blaine Desi. I am the director of the Erie County Public Library, and I will be your host for today's session. A little bit of background. These webinars over the next 3 days have been put together by a group of people here in Erie, Pennsylvania who are committed to the principles of entrepreneurship. Let me review them quickly for you. First, the Northwest Pennsylvania Innovation Beehive, which includes Gannon University, Mercyhurst University, Pennsylvania State University Barron, and Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania. We've been joined also by the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, the Junior Achievement, the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership, and Paramount Pursuits. This has been a very rewarding experience for all of us to work together to provide these webinars for GEW 2020. Over the next few days, there are 5 webinars that are going to be presented to you. This one today, and then 2 tomorrow on Wednesday at noon and 5 p.m. and 2 on Thursday at noon and 5 p.m. We're hoping that you attend all 5 of them. We're looking forward to a very exciting week. And so I want to welcome you again. And I'm now going to turn this over to Kathy Roach for just a few minutes to cover some details.
Thank you very much, Blaine. And again, welcome everyone. And thank you so much for attending our kickoff event. A couple housekeeping items. This webinar today is being recorded, as will be the other 4. And we will be posting on YouTube and sending out links later in the week and the first part of next week. So in case you wanted to share with some of your colleagues, feel free once we have those links available. Also, we are very excited to have a contest, both for each of our events as well as a grand prize. So how it works is that for everyone who is participating today, I will be putting all your names in my coffee mug that is clean and pulling out a name. The lucky winner will receive a $50 gift certificate to You Pick 6 Public House, as well as 1 hour of consulting with Trish at Paramount Pursuits. Now, if you attend all 5 of our events, and I will be keeping track, you have the opportunity to be our grand prize winner. And that includes 3 free months of Erie Technology Incubator Space. It also includes a lovely gift basket from Gone Local, who was actually featured on the news this morning. We also will be offering some consulting services with Brian Slaywin of Ben Franklin Technology Partners, as well as hours of consulting with an accountant and some business consulting as well. So I wish everybody good luck. Enjoy our presentations. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will be monitoring that along with Blaine. And then at the end, we will be having Aaron answer any questions that may come up during his presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to toss it back to Blaine, who will be introducing Aaron Lewis for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. We are very lucky today to have a wonderful speaker to kick off this series of webinars. We were very fortunate to obtain his permission to do this. And so let me introduce him. Mr. Aaron Lewis is the CEO of Sphere Brake Defense, LLC, here in Erie, Pennsylvania. He's a licensed project management professional, and he is a named inventor on numerous Sphere brake patents and currently oversees the administration of 2 large defense contracts for the U.S. Marine Corps and the U.S. Army. AJ has leveraged major universities and manufacturing companies around the region to build, validate, and test Sphere brakes on multiple vehicle platforms. Sphere Brakes recently graduated from the first New York University Stern School of Business 9-month competitive accelerator program, Endless Frontier Labs. AJ received a master's degree in project management from Penn State University Behrend, our local campus of Penn State. He is also a retired military officer who served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. It is my great pleasure to introduce Aaron A.J. Lewis.
Thank you, Dwayne. I appreciate the introduction and good afternoon. Welcome to the kickoff of Global Entrepreneurship Week 2020. It truly is a privilege to speak to you all today. I praise God every day for these unique opportunities and His power to connect everyone, no matter what our passions and pursuits are. I'd like to thank our hosts, the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, Penn State, Gannon, Mercyhurst, and Edinburgh Universities, the Eerie Technology Incubator, the Eerie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership, and the Erie County Public Library for hosting these events this week. So today, I will provide a candid account of how Sphere Brakes came to be, which I've taken liberty in splitting up into 3 sections, each preceded by some form of a humorous pitch. And in the first section, I'll talk about the early years juggling foam balls. Next, I'll talk about losing a tooth, and then I'll talk about a flat tire along Interstate 66. So I came up with the idea of the Sphere Brake acclimating to the 120-degree heat of the Kuwaiti desert before our push into Iraq. I spent my downtime refining the idea. When I returned from Iraq, I had to find an application for the concept, which first led me to the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership. And it was there I met a gentleman named Jake. You guys may have heard of him. He thought it best that I meet with BJ Lechner, who at the time was part of the Northwest IRC. On the same day I met with BJ, I was also introduced to a gentleman named Roy Campbell from the Ben Franklin Technology Partners. And at the time, Northwest IRC and Ben Franklin had shared a floor in Knowledge Park. So I shared the concept of the Sphere Brake with BJ and Roy. And the first thing BJ said is, man, we got to get this on cars. And I said, fantastic. How do we do that? So I wasn't an engineer. Much less a brake engineer. I also wasn't part of the auto industry. I was a military officer fresh out of Iraq, recently hired at GE, and in pursuit of my master's degree from Penn State. Mind you, all of this, of course, took place before my kids arrived on the scene. But in a former life, BJ actually ran the aftermarket division for Dana Brakes here in Erie. And Dana was sold to Affinia Group back in the early 2000s, yet he still had some good friends and connections at Affinia. So before I know it, I'm up in a plane heading to Chicago to pitch the Sphere Brake idea to Affinia. I didn't know what I was walking into, or rather who I was going to pitch to. So upon arrival, I met the president of Affinia Group, who escorts me to this conference area. And as soon as he opens the door, I walk right into a room where there's like 11 executives sitting behind desks in a U shape. And then they proceed to introduce themselves, like director of drum brakes, director of disc brakes, lead engineer on chassis, lead engineer of materials, vice president of sales, on and on. Now here I am, this naive kid from the military, armed with foam balls and foam plates. So after I introduce myself, I go right into my quote unquote pitch. I pass around foam plates and I say, okay, folks, I'm not here to insult your intelligence. Just roll with me. Take the foam plate in one hand and have the person next to you try and turn the plate. This represents a disc brake. And to my amazement, everyone joins in along the exercise. Then I pass around the 3-inch foam balls and instruct them to hold one ball in your hand and have someone try and turn that ball. They all perform the exercise. However, this time there's a lot more chatter. I close my pitch stating, That's the power of the sphere break. So effectively pitching an idea doesn't require the best deck ever, a 5-year business plan, or fully functioning prototypes. Effective pitching is convincing someone or an organization a belief in the feasibility of the idea, fueled by your passion to pull it off. After the pitch, the vice president of R&D, Terry Heffelfinger, who I still remain in contact with, leaned over to me and said that that was the most effective presentation he was a part of. So take note of those last few words, a part of. Every opportunity you have with stakeholders, ensure you bring them into the presentation itself, engage with them, imbibe them with an experience. This was actually the foundation for what we call minimum viable product review days. Instead of investing a ton of money in trade shows and marketing, we bring the potential customers, suppliers, and investors to us, preferably at a test track, field, or some other facility where stakeholders can get hands-on. And in this method, everyone's focused on us, not anyone or anything else. And I'll return to that topic shortly. But getting back to the Affinia pitch, the room of executives turned into this 3-hour session of ideas on how the sphere brake could be applied to numerous vehicle applications, along with all the reasons it wouldn't work. You know, these are engineers, so you know, we're going up against 100-year-old technology. I couldn't keep up with the note taking, and then finally the president stated, "Hey, let's not all get ahead of ourselves. Aaron has a lot of work to do with the sphere brake. A lot of validation and testing must be performed before anyone will ever see this thing on a car." So we closed out that meeting, and I ended up flying back to Erie. I took that list of all the reasons why the sphere brake could or could not work, and then I turned them into basically my action plan and assumptions log. So I sat down with Ben Franklin, Tech Partners, and BJ, and I told him how the trip to Chicago went, and I ended up securing my very first initial investment from Ben Franklin, which started that validation process of the sphere brake. So that segues into the next section, from foam balls to losing a tooth. So from the Affinia pitch to the official launch of sphere brakes, the concept went through this immense period of validation. First, the concept was modeled in Adena software so that it could be tested in finite element analysis at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center down at Carnegie Mellon University. The models went through millions of runs, changing one variable at a time. The whole process took about 6 months. Yet the results demonstrated that our sphere brake produced 230% more power, yet it was only half the size of a competing disc brake. So with that competitive FEA result, we manufactured a couple of sphere brakes and then took those brakes to Link Engineering in Detroit and tested them on a dyno. And the results validated the FEA results. So now we knew we had something quite special. Through the Ben Franklin Tech Partners in Penn State, I was introduced to a gentleman named Skip Yakel from Volvo Truck. Volvo Truck and Penn State have a very long-standing history. Now retired, Skip was an executive that handled technology, government, and academic outreach for the organization. He connected me with a guy named Mac Bradley, who is head of brake engineering for Volvo and Mack Trucks. Mac was very intrigued by the sphere brake concept, so much so that Volvo drafted a letter of interest. So armed with a letter of interest, an issued patent, and promising test results, both in the lab and on a dyno, I pursued a fundraising round of private capital so that I could quit my careers in the military and at GE to pursue this venture full time. So mind you, I was giving up substantial career paths, exceptional benefits, and our firstborn son, Noah, was on the way. This was all happening, culminating at the same time. That journey, facilitated by BJ and Ben Franklin, led us to a prominent manufacturing family here in Erie. They were able to and continue to provide both short-term and long-term value. Capital is what I like to call it in the short term, with an ability to manufacture at high volumes over the long term. In essence, we can remain small, agile, make decisions fast, yet posture like we're one of our billion-dollar brake competitors. So we launched Sphere Brakes at the start of 2016. Not more than 6 months later, I'm at the Larson Transportation Institute test track in Bellefonte, PA, which is just northeast of Penn State main campus. And I'm hosting our first minimum viable product review day, the MVP days. We have this big tent set up in the middle of a track. Those attending included reps from Volvo, Ben Franklin. We had professors, the Navy, and some manufacturers that helped build the first kits. This time, I'm armed with handouts, swag, prototypes, and a slide deck, a big step up from foam balls and foam plates. So I proceed to pitch the technology, and everything is going well. Then in the middle of my pitch, I literally lose a tooth. It just goes flying out. Do I lose a step in my delivery? Hell no, I keep right on pitching. In fact, Skip from Volvo leaned over to someone and said, "Did he really just lose a tooth and keep going? This guy's incredible." And by the way, this wasn't just any tooth, it was a front tooth. So it was quite hard to keep from whistling for the remainder of my pitch. And no one ever found the tooth. Still missing. I have new ones though, so we're good. So at the conclusion of my pitch inside of this tent, I direct everyone's attention to the track, where the perfectly timed test driver cruises around the corner and performs an emergency stop in a Mack truck with the Sphere brakes installed on it. In mic drop fashion, true to Steve Jobs style, I said, "Oh yeah, there's one more thing. Our Sphere brakes just stopped that Mack truck." Everyone was blown away. Multiple folks through that attended the event, they thought they were just going to see like these benchtop prototypes, maybe some demonstrations on the benchtop or on a cutoff axle. They weren't anticipating an actual opportunity to feel them on the truck. So the fact that we could go from nothing to having brakes on a Mack truck in half a year with limited capital was nothing short of amazing. But actually, it took an army of support. Local organizations like Red Dog, PHB, Navitec, Zebraform, BB's Truck and Auto, Ben Franklin, and Penn State. That's who helped us very early on in those first 6 months of our startup. That MVP review day landed us our very first contract with the Navy. We started our SBR program with Marine Corps Systems Command, and we're now just halfway through the 3-year phase 2 program as of today. So that's a nice segue into what I like to call our final section here, from losing a tooth to changing a tire. Over the next couple of years, we were expanding at the speed of failure. Typical of most startup founders, I was chasing all the opportunities to bring money in. And that was to a fault. Yet we learned so much, and I wouldn't change anything about it. While we were developing the defense brake kits, we launched a few other development projects from the latter half of 2019 into early 2022. We had partnered with nitro teams within the National Hot Rod Association to develop our new patent pending frictionless regenerative eddy sphere brake. And to do that, we collaborated with Innovation Commons in the Idea Lab at the Erie County Library to develop new sphere brake prototypes. We had sponsored a senior design project at Barron, which team somehow managed to network and validate formulas with NASA. I'm not sure how they pulled that off, but it was really awesome. And we started developing a sphere brake kit for the freight rail industry. We partnered with Mercyhurst University to perform market research on the rail industry and where we could enter in certain segments of that supply chain. We competed in Army X-Tech search competitions, subsequently bringing 2 of our competitors in that competition to Eerie for the secure Eerie Accelerator. And you may recall them as Conduit Technologies and Vita and Clonata. Vita actually just won the Army X-Tech Search 4.0 competition, a graduate of the Secure Eerie Accelerator from last year. So we were invited to DC to pitch our technology to folks from the Pentagon. My lean leader and I hopped into the car on an early Monday morning, 4 a.m. to be exact, and started our trek across Pennsylvania through Maryland down into Virginia to pitch at precisely 10:30 a.m. All of a sudden, bang, my left rear tire blows out. I managed to get the car to the side of the highway without any discussion whatsoever. Jason and I jump out of the car. We get right to work on changing out that tire. Mind you, this is a DC interstate, so anyone who's ever traveled in and around DC knows the risks of doing anything on the side of the road on the highway. So we managed to get the tire fixed, and we race into DC literally with less than 10 minutes to spare before our pitch window. We meet our director of R&D, Joe Fiore, in the lobby. We look at each other with a collective sigh of relief and then get called into the auditorium to pitch our technology. As I walk in, I find myself back in the conference room of Affinia. The room's filled with generals and civilian leaders. I go through my pitch, respond to their questions, and the lead facilitator, who happens to be a two-star general, says, "Thank you. Please step outside for a few minutes and we'll call you back in." So after about 5 minutes sitting outside this auditorium, we get summoned back inside. And the general informed us that we had an exceptional technology and that his team will be working with vehicle program managers to identify vehicles that our technology would best serve for the Army, and that his people will be in touch with us very soon, whatever very soon is. So we collect up our prototype and materials and walk outside. We look at each other and say collectively, well, that couldn't have gone any better. So then we make our trip back to Erie, 6.5 hours. The key lesson learned here is you always travel the day before a key pitch, especially if it's in the morning and it's in DC. So that brings us to 2020, and everyone knows what's going on in 2020. This year started off very promising. We were one of only 15 global startups to graduate from New York University Stern School of Business, the 9-month competitive accelerator called Endless Frontier Labs, EFL for short. And in the program, companies had to meet challenging goals every 2 months. At the conclusion of each iteration, founders would meet with the investors and mentors at NYU for feedback and guidance. It also served as an opportunity to network and grow your presence, not only in New York, but around the whole East Coast. And the EFL program facilitated our development of the world's first hydraulic sphere brake, which we did in partnership with Cleveland Cycle Works, right over in Cleveland, on their first and new electric motorcycle called the Land District. So that accelerator also facilitated a vast new pool of mentors and investors that we can call upon to address unique business challenges. Folks like Frank Valisi, who started an optics company for the defense industry, ran that for 20 years, and then sold it actually to a foreign country. Eitan Zemel, who helped the U.S. Fight the manufacturing invasion of foreign cars into the U.S. during the 80s, as well as a guy named Bill Farrell, who invented Adobe After Effects, which is actually still used to this day. So I also got to meet exceptional entrepreneurs with exciting and cutting edge technologies, most notably Laura Kornhauser, CEO and founder of Stratify. I connected her actually to a board member from Eerie Insurance Group, and they're currently helping that company navigate the insurance industry. Though we weren't impacted rather as severe as a lot of other businesses in the region due to COVID, we did find ourselves in some financial turmoil from the pursuit of basically doing too much at the same time. We were growing our team, taking on additional overhead, spending too much in operations and development, having mixed results from brake testing. We needed to hedge everything to get costs under control, pivot to a better brake design, and really focus. So we put together a plan that entailed cutting salaries, buy downs on insurance policies, cutting patent costs, operating costs. We did secure a small PPP loan and also a line of credit. The complexity of government accounting is astounding. And I decided to hire a retired DCAA auditor, Defense Contract Audit Agency, as a consultant to help draft our incurred cost submission and provisional billing rates, which for most people just went over your heads. It went over my head too the first time I talked that language. Basically, if you don't do it right, you go to jail, and I don't want to go to jail. I want to do the right thing. So we hire the best we can to help us do the right things. I also hired Better Business Concepts to develop accurate financial dashboards, to monitor key financial metrics and forecasting. They actually have multiple consultants who were CPAs in defense firms, so that remains a natural fit for us. It was a welcoming sight, actually, to see our finances move in a positive direction, restoring salaries, recuperating costs, and paying down long-term liabilities from the start of the year. So we're in a much better spot financially. However, to get our technology back on track for our defense contracts, we recruited and hired a gentleman named Tim Osterberg as a brake industry consultant. In a former life, Tim started out in chassis and brake development for Harley Davidson in the late 80s. He started with a 30-man engineering team. When he left Harley in the early 2000s, he actually had 1,000 engineers under him. An entrepreneur himself, when he left Harley, he actually started up a wind farm company in the real estate industry. And we all know what happened in the early 2000s. The market crashed, and that ended his pursuit of the real estate wind farm industry. So he went into consulting. A lot of executives in the brake and chassis industries ended up at Hayes Brake, helping them design, develop, and manufacture the brakes that are currently on the Army's Joint Light Tactical Vehicle. So we brought Tim on this year to ensure that we're moving the technology needle in the right direction. So through the exceptional design, development, and manufacturing leadership brought on by our Director of Engineering, Joe, and our lean leader, Jason, coupled with his expertise, our brake test product forms went from system status of fail, 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 to pass, fail, pass, fail, to pass, pass, pass. And it was just in time because we did a lot of negotiating and restructuring on another transaction agreement with the Army. We landed our first transition contract through the Rapid Capabilities and Critical Technologies Office, which is an accelerated contract. So the brakes have to be right. Over the next 10 months, we're going to be manufacturing a slew of sphere brakes. We'll be testing those brakes on 2 different military vehicles at Aberdeen Proving Grounds. Once track testing is complete, we'll be field testing the vehicles in Jennerstown for mountain brake descent certification. That's actually just out of Pittsburgh. And at the conclusion of testing, the technology will be transitioned to numerous programs of record comprising fleets of more than 70,000 vehicles. Those vehicles have 6 to 8 wheel ends each. So, of course, this represents a substantial opportunity for this region and also for our distributed supply chain. And then the natural transition from military ground vehicles includes scaling the technology to commercial vehicles in the same weight class, along with foreign military sales overseas. So our history demonstrates that the entrepreneurial journey is quite an adventure. It's full of unexpected turns, twists, pivots. In our case, foam balls, losing teeth, and flat tires. But you just have to remember to trust yourself. You have to focus. We have to do what you say you're going to do. Managing communications and stakeholder engagement is extremely critical throughout the whole life cycle, from start, whether you're starting off or you're already generating a lot of revenue. And you always have to surround yourself with smarter people than you. Know that you're not the smartest in the room. You better not be the smartest in the room, because you're not going to last long. And then know thy cash. I love the saying, know thy cash. I always like to quote Jack Ma when he offers his guidance to entrepreneurs. Today is hard. Tomorrow will be much harder. The day after tomorrow will be glorious. However, most of you will not survive tomorrow night. So you cannot do this alone. You need exceptional team members, investors, leveraged regional assets like the universities, chambers, and libraries, champions, mentors, early adopters, and motivated suppliers to help you pull this off. So I implore you to leverage all those resources that this great region has to offer, because we wouldn't be where we're at today without any of them. And I thank all of our hosts once again for coordinating and facilitating all these events that are going to occur this week. And I do encourage everyone to participate in the events in the spirit of entrepreneurship and moving this town forward. So at this time, I will open it up for Q&A and discussion.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We really appreciate it. We do have a question for you from Brad Gleason. I'll read the question. What should local entrepreneurs know about your experience with Erie's startup ecosystem? That's part A. Part B, what was your most challenging obstacle and how did you overcome it?
So part A, what should local entrepreneurs know about my experience? So I think the most critical piece of information or advice I can give you is how easy it is to work with everyone in this ecosystem. Whether you're trying to get in touch with one of the Beehive universities, whether you need some co-working space with Sean Fedorko over at Radius Co-work, there's just so many resources available and everyone is pushing the rock in the right direction, the same direction. When it comes to the Erie startup ecosystem, everyone wants to help each other collectively move things forward because it's our businesses that are generating the most job creation in this region. And they're good jobs, they're good paying jobs with good benefits. So, whether you want to have some prototypes made, listen, like when I go anywhere, when I go to DC, Huntsville, North Carolina, Chicago, California, Nevada, wherever I'm at, I tell people, Erie is this gem because you can have an idea and, it could be rough. You can have a business plan, it could be rough, but you can literally hand the challenge off to these universities, get prototypes made, get business plans and financials made, get market data performed, get branding, art, and packaging done, all without really spending a dime of your own money other than your own effort and driving to each of the universities, which are all within 40 miles of each other. That doesn't exist really anywhere, and everyone is blown away that they can actually launch a company just like that in one region with all the support and power behind universities and what they bring. And plus, you have Ben Franklin Tech Partners who continue to provide us substantial support from day-to-day operations all the way to networking and getting us out there to the best of their ability. So my experience is a very positive one. Everyone's willing to help. We can definitely get anyone connected to, wherever you're at in the life cycle. There's ways of entering the system, very low barriers to get into the ecosystem. And then so far, what was my most challenging obstacle and how did I overcome it? I think it happened this year. I mean, it was, I had to do some, not only a technology pivot, really, it was a soul searching pivot. As entrepreneurs, we want to take every dollar that comes our way when there's a cost to that dollar, and you got to be ready to accept that dollar and the costs that are associated with that dollar. And what I mean is, you can't just say, okay, hey, Volvo Truck, they're interested in this technology and they want to do a partnership to make 100 brakes and we'll put them on 50 vehicles and those vehicles are going to go through 1 million miles collectively. That sounds like a great deal, but the cost of doing that could exceed $1 million very quickly. So you have to, as an entrepreneur, you gotta pace yourself. You gotta really understand where you want to go, stay focused. And as I tell my guys here, we do less than obsess, right? Focus on what we do best. Let's excel at it and then take it to the next level.
Thank you. We have another question from Jordan Fuller. Given your experience with other cities and programs, what do you think is something that could be improved about the Eerie ecosystem?
I think what could be improved is there's one thing that I know right off the bat that is a stark reality, whether it's Erie or compared to New York or Vegas or down south in the Research Triangle area, is that there is a robust amount of early seed investors, like venture capital firms and private equity firms. There aren't too many of those in this area. And so the competitiveness is a little bit challenging. Now, we do have a lot of great investments like the opportunity zones. We have Ben Franklin Technology Partners. We have Blue Tree, 1855 Capital. But when you go to New York City, you have the New York Angels, and then there's 50 other venture capital firms and private equity firms. But I wouldn't, you don't need. I guess this is a good time to bring it up. Not every company needs venture capital and really shouldn't pursue it unless it's a strategic move that actually helps your company and not hurts it. I've seen VCs gang up on small businesses and destroy them. Once you start bringing on diluted institutional investors that have more power than you, better legal teams than you think they're working for you, but they're really not. They're in it for their returns. You got to just be careful about it. I've not had that experience with Ben Franklin Tech Partners or any of the other folks that I mentioned that work in this area, but I have seen it in bigger places like New York City. So, it's a double-edged sword, right? You want more investors, but you want the right ones. You want the venture capital firms that are actually going to help this region, not try and squander it and take the cash and run. The same with private equity. But that's the biggest thing. Yeah, we got to have a lot more kind of cash flow going on. But as far as just the foundation, this region, it's very hard to beat the competitiveness that this region brings. I don't see universities working together in these bigger cities, and if you in most of these bigger universities, it's hard to get to anyone who has any say in anything. Whereas everyone around here is very accessible and open and welcoming to startups.
Okay. There's another question, and that is, and this is from Sarah Hanks. What strategies do you use to find early adopters and customers?
So we have used and continue to use every day, build, measure, learn feedback loop. So we build something really crappy that may be functional or not. We get it in their hands. We let them play with it, toy around with it, destroy it, give us their feedback, and we iterate again. And we have to iterate faster than we did the first time. You're basically taking this, the best analogy is you take a rough piece of coal and you're shaping it down to a diamond. So just know, I took a foam ball to a board of industry executives, and they understood exactly what we were trying to do. So get whatever you possibly can in front of customers, early adopters' hands, let them be a part of the development process. And you do that, they're going to actually design what exactly they want, instead of you trying to design something you think they want, and then you put it out there and no one's buying. So everything we do, we go to customers, we go to military bases, we get the stuff in their hands, and we learn. Sometimes it's very in your face with feedback, and that's exactly what you want. You don't want to coddle. You want to know exactly what works and what doesn't with your technology. And that also brings up another point, that you can't hold on to your baby. Your baby is meant to go out there and kind of be destroyed. So you want to, you have an idea of what you think people want, but ultimately they're going to decide what they want. And you have to be able to pivot to give them what they want. We just went through that. We hit all these requirements on this break, and we were going down this path for 2 years, but it wasn't doing one specific thing that was a key requirement. And I was producing enough deceleration. So we had to pivot, and I had to let it go. And I did it in literally like an hour. It just, okay, it's not going to work. So we're not going to go down that path. We have to go down where customers are actually going to pay for your products.
Okay, and we have a question from Brian Fuller. How important was it to understand the industry and your target market before beginning your business model?
It wasn't. I mean, I went in with an idea, and I approached industry and learned a lot from, them shooting holes in everything about the technology. I mean, you learn the industry and the targets. There's no way you can really have a target market until you go out into the industry, protected, of course, NDAs and all that, and get into customers' hands. They will ultimately determine what segments you're going to go into. I didn't start the sphere when I developed the sphere brake in Kuwait. I didn't know my first application was going to be on a semi truck. So I just go down the path of least resistance. Who's buying, who's putting in letters of interest, who's championing the technology for you. You may like them, you may not, but they're the ones who are going to take you across the chasm into the pragmatic buyers, which is the mass market.
Okay. And we have a question from Jordan Fuller. What strategies have you used when growing your team? Early hires can be very difficult.
Yep. So my very first hire wasn't your typical title. It wasn't COO, it wasn't business development officer or CFO. It was lean leader. From the very beginning, lean is at the forefront of everything. We have to operate as efficiently and as effectively as possible. That was pounded into my head when I worked at GE. It works very well, especially in a small business where you have to stretch every dollar as far as possible. So I actually hired our lean leader, Jason, first, so that we would put in all of the processes and the culture that we needed to be successful over a very long period of time, so that anyone else who was hired past that point has no choice but to adopt the culture that we instill, the values that we instill, and the ethos. So it was lean leader, and then it was director of R&D, because we had a knowledge gap of in-house design work, international business experience. So we brought on Joe, who has over 75 patents in numerous industries, everything from consumer products all the way to car seats for kids. So very safety focused, but he also worked overseas in China. He's got a lot of international experience, and he's worked with a lot of the big consumer product companies like Cummins, Whirlpool, KitchenAid. So he brings just a tremendous amount of knowledge to how we need to design our brakes going forward. But yeah, it is imperative to have your strategy on how you want the business to grow first before you make those key hires. If you make the wrong hire early, it could just end your company. And I've talked with entrepreneurs that have made the wrong hires, and you've spent more time managing the relationship than you do managing your business or the launch of a technology. What you want is everyone to fill a gap that is critical for the strategy in time, the life cycle and time of your business.
Okay, here's another question for you. You mentioned that you weren't expecting to be selling to big rig trucking. How did you find your product market fit? Do you think what you have right now is the final fit or just the current fit?
So we ended up in semi trucks just because that was the path of least resistance. We had demonstrated the technology when we tested it on a dyno. We used an F-150 setup in Detroit, which is very scalable up or down because we didn't know which way we were going to go with it. And it just so happened that, Penn State has a great relationship with Volvo Truck and Mack Truck. And we got it in front of them and they were like, yeah, this is definitely something worth pursuing. We're not sure how you're going to pull it off, but we're at least willing to write a letter of interest and support you. And if you need engineering information or anything that they can provide that's non-proprietary, of course, they were going to do. And then that naturally led us to heavy vehicles in the military because we had pitched the technology on a Mack truck. The Navy personnel were present at the test track, and what we had demonstrated was no pad, no brake, or no tool brake pad changes, significant weight reduction, smaller packaging, and it was bolt-on. Those were the key things that I know any customer will want with any kind of brake. You can't go to a customer and say, hey, you got to change everything on your platform to accept our technology. No, you have to not only tell them our technology is scalable, but it also just bolts right on. You take the old technology off, you throw our technology on, and you immediately get the savings that the technology brings. So it resonated well with the Navy and the DoD, who are very weight sensitive, cash sensitive, of course. And we've always kind of been pushing down that heavy vehicle side. But we knowing, I mean, this is where I get back to, me going after everything most entrepreneurs do, is you want more, right? Okay, what other applications, if this doesn't work, I need a fallback plan. What other platforms can our brakes go onto? And that got us into the rail side of things. That got us into the racing side of things. That got us onto motorcycles, 2-cycle applications. So we're always pushing in different industries, but right now it's all focused on getting the defense kits right.
Okay. We have a question from Jordan Fuller. What help do you need from the Eerie ecosystem right now? Is there anything we can do to help Sphere Brake go to the next level?
Right now, I think I'm using and abusing the Eerie ecosystem quite well. I don't know if they want to give up anymore. All kidding aside, like I've got, I built a fantastic network here, and everyone is willing and able to help everyone. So we're right where we need to be. We can't move any faster right now. We're doing exactly what we need to do. I've obviously worked with everyone at the universities. We continue to do that. So I appreciate that invite. But we're rocking and rolling right now. So
okay. I have a question for you, AJ. And I believe you had mentioned that you had developed the concept for the Sphere Brake while you were in Iraq. And I'm curious how that developed. Can you tell us how you first had that idea for the Sphere Brake, even before you got into the ecosystem? How did you create that idea, or what did you observe that motivated you to want to pursue this?
So I have a lot of ideas. I was actually a furniture designer. I went to North Carolina, I went to East Carolina for my bachelor's degree as furniture. It's like furniture doesn't even exist anymore in the US. They're trying to bring it back, but so I went through this furniture design program. So naturally you just think of things, you think of ideas, you tinker. I grew up racing dirt bikes, so I was always tearing apart motors and everything. So I was mechanically inclined to that effect. And in the furniture program, you had to take an idea. Like the coursework was pretty intense. You were basically given a project, and the project was build a table. So it could either be functional, non-functional, it could be small, it could be big, whatever. It didn't matter. That wasn't part of it. The only thing you said was you have to build a table. And you really get no instruction about it. So you have to design a table. You have to figure out how it's going to be put together. You have to buy the materials yourself. You have to, make the table yourself. You have to finish it. And then at the end of the semester, you got to sell what you made. So it was that kind of mentality of always under the gun, trying to push things fast and do exactly what people you think would. The difference was we were just making things we liked, but we had, back of our mind, hey, this thing's got to sell. But that matured into just coming up with a bunch of ideas. And I met a guy in Cary, North Carolina, who designed the toys for Connects, which was awesome. And I went to his basement. I had to sign this agreement and everything. And it's like this layer of just coolness. And he had all these pieces of equipment, everything in his basement. He was literally making all these new cutting edge models for Connects company. And I said, how do you do what you do? Like, how did you even come to this in life? And he said, I just tinker, and I, started doing good design work and started getting myself out there and ended up doing design work for Connects exclusively. And he worked out a deal with them. So I'm just an ideas guy. I have a lot of ideas. The sphere break was just one that ended up going very well. So, that's kind of how it goes. When you have a lot of ideas, I lock them away in a folder, and maybe we'll be able to pursue them later. So,
right. I don't see that there are any more questions for you. I'm going to ask if there is any other question out there. Just for a second, I don't see one. So, Aaron, on behalf of all of us here and all of us who plan these webinars, I want to thank you very, very much. You gave a wonderful presentation. We really are so thrilled to have you here. And to go from an idea to where you are today is truly inspiring for everyone who wants to follow in your footsteps. And I'm sure that you would be willing to consult with others as they go through their own processes. So, so on behalf of everyone, thank you so much. And if you're remote, please sort of give Aaron a virtual round of applause if you want to do that. And before we go, I just want to remind everyone here that we do have 4 other webinars coming up this week. We have 2 tomorrow. The first at noon is called The Urgency of Now, Tales from Early Entrepreneurs. That's followed by a webinar at 5 o'clock tomorrow called A Conversation with Seasoned Webinars. And then on Thursday, November the 19th, we have 2 additional webinars, one at noon called How Entrepreneurs Can Grow Together in Recovering Cities, which Eerie certainly is. And then at 5 o'clock on Thursday, we also have a webinar called Eerie's Entrepreneurial Ecosystem, Services that Every Entrepreneur Should Know About. So this is a week filled with wonderful information planned by some of the most entrepreneurial people and organizations in Erie County. If you're local, that's wonderful. If you're not local, please still reach out to us. I think that anyone who's been involved in this program would be willing to help. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please tune in for the 4 following webinars that are coming Wednesday and Thursday. And we want to wish everyone a very, very happy day. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to Hayden Weaver from Mount Joy Naturals, who is our first contest winner. I will be contacting you, Hayden. Thank you, everybody.
Everyone. Thank you. And thank you again, Aaron, for a wonderful webinar.
Yes.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Congratulations on your successes.
Thank you.